with your experience of it?
So the film was in equal measure very, very difficult to cast and very, very easy. It was easy because I was very lucky to get my first choices for every role that I wanted to cast, apart from Liv, and it's not that she wasn't my first choice, it just took me about 6 months to find her. The film lives or dies on how willing you are to go along with Sarah and on how willing you are to go on her journey. So there's a huge amount of pressure on the young actress who is going to take on this role, and I think Liv didn't quite realise what she was getting into until after we had shot it, which was a bit of a relief, because it could have been a bit tricky if it happened halfway through the shoot. But yeah, so Sinead and Cyril and Thomas and everyone else, like my first, they were my first choices for the roles, and for them to say yes was like a bit overwhelming, because it's my first feature film and we weren't offering any money. Everybody worked on everyone on the cast and the crew worked for deferment, so there was no financial incentive, but they I guess they just wanted to do it because they liked the project. Or maybe they weren't doing anything else. I don't know. So yeah, there's a little bit of an anecdote about how I ended up finding Liv, because there was we had a very specific window of time, because it's just a film and that's what happens to make it. And Cyril's agent called me and said, "Oh, is it still happening?" And I said, "Yeah, but I haven't found Sarah yet." And she said, "But aren't you supposed to start shooting in like 2 weeks' time?" And I said, "Yeah, but it'll happen." She said, "Well, just send me the script, I'll read it tonight, and I'll get back to you tomorrow." And she did, which is kind of unusual. But she sent me Liv's self-tape, and then I guess the rest, as they say, is history. And that was it. So that's my kind of very, very lucky and privileged to have gotten to work with these talented people. So.
And
Long answer.
And would you guys tell us a little bit about coming into this project and inhabiting these characters?
Yeah, hi. I like these chairs, these sort of Joey chairs, you know. Yeah, I must come here and watch a film. Excuse me, I lost a tooth yesterday, so if you see a toothless gap, it's not that I'm a vagrant. Yeah. I spoke to James, basically. He phoned up my agent and sent me the script, and we said we'd meet. We had a conversation over coffee. I really liked him. I liked the script, and so I said I would do it if I possibly could, because there was a bit of other work around, and I was doing other things. So that's why my agent was a bit pushy with him towards the end, because I'd said yes, and she wanted me to do money jobs, you know, and because that's, you know, how she makes her money. And so she was getting a bit like, hang on a second, you've agreed to do this thing and there's no money in it, and yeah, let's just get him moved on. And so yeah, she phoned him up, and but she's a very good agent, and so yeah, she does read things. She reads a lot. In fact, she reads pretty much most things that I say yes to. So yeah, so so that was how that happened, and I just thought that you know, meeting James, he was just so impressive in terms of the subject that I felt I had to yeah, get involved. Yeah, it's a lovely, touching story, and also I felt empathy with the character in terms of I wouldn't have been an actor had it not been for a drama teacher at school, you know, finding me one morning and saying, "I think you'll find the solution to all your problems in this," you know. So yeah, so that's why.
I just read the script in one evening. Took me about 2 hours, and usually when you read it in one reading, it's the job for you. I just felt like I just had this gut feeling that I just needed to tackle this role. Plus I was 16, it was my first feature as well, so I was kind of desperate just to miss school and get on to do a job. But no, I really genuinely loved it, and then I met James, and we just sort of talked about the intentions of the character one afternoon and just stuff like that. But he was really great because he sort of just let us all go on instinct. And with instinct, you're going to make mistakes sometimes. I know I did make a lot of mistakes, but I approached it with empathy and sensitivity, and I suppose that's all you can really do. Yeah.
I just saw the script and it was a peach, so I was like, yeah, okay.
I also want to ask a little bit about, there's something very specific about timing in this film, comedic and kind of very dramatic timing, and bringing us like into, from kind of almost laughing and then laughing a little bit and then like this isn't funny anymore, and how do you work this kind of timing into the movie? It must be difficult.
Yeah, I'm quite lucky. I write on my own to a point, and then if I've worked with a writer for 10 years, and him and I have got a shorthand. And one of the things we knew that we wanted this film not to be was just like overtly depressing and miserable. Because like even if life is the way I see life, like, I don't think life's like that all the time. Like, and oftentimes like you kind of can find humor in the tragedy of life, and I think there's like a lot to talk about with this, but I know we haven't got a lot of time, but it's just finding the humor in tragedy and like making that your outlook on life. So, I mean, the comedy in the film's inherent in the drama, and it was a big. We had to believe in the material. I didn't direct it as a comedy. You just can't, because the material is the material, and like there's no way you can make fun of it. But somehow the humor is just there, like in life, really. So, yeah.
I wanna throw this out to you guys if you have some questions from the audience right there.
What was the thought process behind what trauma Sarah would go through, especially in terms of how it would end the movie?
So was the question, what's the thought process behind the trauma she goes through?
And how you would end the movie, considering what she goes through.
How would we end it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's a great question. The ending's like one of my favourite parts of the film. But when we were writing the screenplay, I fell in love with Sarah and her struggle, and wanted her to succeed, and I wanted things to be okay for her, but and I wrote it that she, for a long while it was in the script that she actually left, but it was always wrong, because the nature of her problem is like the whole thing is not that easy to walk away from. She's a very, very vulnerable young person, and it would be a betrayal to the nature of what it is to be a carer with those responsibilities, to just allow her to get on the train and leave. But we did a lot of research and spent a lot of time with young carers, which I don't know if it's a term in America, but it's basically a young person that has responsibilities to care for somebody in their family. Like, it's not paid, it's just something that you do. And we didn't really, even though the story is an entire fiction, the circumstances in which Sarah finds herself are all pretty much we drew from conversations that we had with vulnerable young people in the living very similar lives. So you have a certain responsibility to be honest with the material, because you are dealing with real people's lives. Does that answer the question? No?
Yeah.
I think we have time for maybe one question.
Hi.
I'll say this a bit and then James got a better answer. But we basically, James, we talked about it, the characters had a spell in care in the past, and I think that's what is motivating her from keeping silent. And also as a young carer, it's just part of the role, and they don't believe, I'm not a young carer, but I'm imagining, you haven't grown up in any other circumstance. So what you're doing is completely the norm. You've got all this responsibility, and you are the mother of the household. So I don't know, the ending, I think there's a beacon of hope, but I don't think it's a happy ending. I just think she goes back to the same responsibility.
Mic drop. Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that, but when we were writing the character, I kind of imagined her like a plate spinner, and at the beginning of the story, she's kind of doing a really good job of just keeping all the plates spinning, and one by one, it's just like one of these kind of knock-on effects where something happens, and then it just, all of a sudden, they all just start falling off. About asking for help, we talked a lot about where Sarah had been before we find her in the story at the beginning, and every single decision she makes in the story is about protecting her family, and especially her younger brother and sister, and being someone who's been through care and experienced firsthand the system that's in place to support vulnerable young people. It's just something that she just cannot allow to happen for her younger brother and sister. So that's why she doesn't necessarily outright ask for help, but for me personally, I feel like the gesture at the end of the head on the shoulder of Mr. Hill is that's the moment where she finally goes, okay, like I can't keep doing this, like I've got to let someone in, and he's the person who's there for her.
That's beautiful. I'm sorry to say we're going to have to put an end to the Q&A. Thank you guys so much for being here with us.
Thanks for coming to watch the film, everybody. Thank you.